Oftentimes in life, we can't help what happens to us, but what we can do is be proactive with our bodies and taking care of ourselves after we find out. And that's why we're here this afternoon with Dr. Jayson Field, who's going to shed a little bit more light on cervical cancer. How are you today?
Good. How are you doing? Thank you for having me here.
Doing well. Thank you so much for joining Studio 10, especially because January is National Cervical Cancer Month. And a lot of times I feel like we're a little unfamiliar with illnesses until we find ourselves in that situation and we realize, hey, this is happening to us. So can you first just tell us a little bit more about how cervical cancer really affects the body?
So cervical cancer in the U.S. is actually a very rare cancer. There's maybe 10 or 12,000 cases a year. Worldwide, there's 500,000 women a year that will get it, and ultimately the majority of them will die of their cancer. In this country, most of them should be prevented with vaccination and with screening with pap smears.
Okay. Now, it's great that you said there's screening options and there are preventative actions that we can take, but can you walk us through a little bit about what those screening options, what does that look like?
So most parents should be having their kids, boys and girls, vaccinated around age 11 or 12. It's a two-part vaccination that protects against 9 different strains of virus that cause cervical cancers, oral cancers, and other cancers of the skin. And that can be prevented with that vaccine. So it's really important to get that for boys and girls.
Okay, and how early should we start making sure that we're taking those vaccines as well?
So the earliest age is age 9. But the goal is to get kids vaccinated before age 15. That way they only have to have 2 shots. So 11 and 12 is the optimal age when kids' immune system is at its very strongest.
Well, it's always great that we can take those preventative measures and that we can be proactive. But if we do find ourselves in that circumstance, what is it like making an appointment with you, and how do you walk people through this difficult process?
So most people, if they're being screened and getting their annual visits with their primary doctor, are going to have a pap smear that's going to show up abnormal. It's usually followed by a biopsy and sometimes a larger biopsy, and then they'll usually get referred at that point to a cancer doctor like myself. So usually it's not symptomatic. They won't have any abnormal symptoms at all. If it's more advanced, there can be abnormal bleeding or discharge, but more of the time, hopefully, it's going to be prevented with the vaccine or found early with a pap smear.
Okay, so you're saying that those symptoms aren't, sometimes they're a little invisible. Sometimes we don't always notice it, but just making sure that we're getting those regular checkups and that we're making those regular appointments with our doctor. These are just small ways that can make a big difference over time.
Huge difference, yep. Right. I really encourage patients. First things are eating healthy and exercising, but after that, getting your annual exam with either a gynecologist, family doctor, or internist.
Sometimes I think we underestimate that those small steps that we can take on a daily basis actually make a big difference in the long run. So do you have any other words of encouragement that you do offer to your patients when they do step here?
So the majority of cervical cancer patients in this country are going to be able to be treated, often cured. In the future, we hope by 2034 with vaccination that there won't be cervical cancer anymore in this country. That's the goal with vaccination.
Yeah, that's the goal, and it's great that you guys here are working to make sure that happens. And if you at home need any more information or want to talk more to Dr. Jayson Field about what the next steps are in order to take care of cervical cancer, we have that information right here on your screen. And thank you so much for joining us and just shedding a light on this.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.